Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to Commissioner Wilson's virtual office hours.
Thank you, Lee. Happy Friday, everybody.
Hi. It's been a really long but beautiful week.
Was confused about. I'm like, is it Friday? Monday? Wait, it was one of those weeks and going into another one. So it's gonna be it's gonna feel like that, but in a good way. Somewhat. We've had, since last time we were here, we had a really great response to our guests that were here last Friday. What did
Oh,
you
my
hear?
goodness.
This is you.
Well, first of all, we really wanted to talk about the fostering process because we love dogs and
Yes.
cats and rabbits.
And it's right now in rabbits, and it's the thing that we can sort of do without having to wait through huge policy changes and to wait. This was like, so talking about fostering last week. What was the update we got from?
Well, we had Diane Summers from Orange County Animal Shelters that came and spoke with Janet Williams from Adore Rescue and also Desiree Pizio from Rescue Me Orlando, speaking on why fostering and adopting is so important.
Amazing guest.
And Diane Summers wrote us and said that after that virtual live office hour, they had over 51 inquiries for new fosters to register.
Thank you. It's such an important thing. And I think hearing that, through most rescues, you get help with the vet's visits. And if there's behavioral issues, they're not going to match you with a foster that isn't a good fit for your family, and sort of understanding that it can be, a little role to play in trying to make sure that we're getting our furry friends taken care of in this county. So thank you for responding to that. And thank you to our guests from that day. It just was such a delight to have them. And I think now that we're coming out of the stricter of the stages of recovery from COVID, we'll be able to do it more and more. I'm just very grateful.
There's a huge backlog. There's tons of animals that are in the shelter right now that really don't behave the way that they would if they were in the comfort of someone's home. And so if you want to become a foster or an adopter, please email district1@ocfl.net or drop your inquiry in the chat so that we can connect you to the right people.
Yes, and if any of my rescue friends are on here, feel free to share the website for your particular rescue, or Rescue Me Orlando, I know, is like the connector for so many of them. Utilize their amazing social media pages, and yeah, I feel like there's so much to do. There's so much work to do, but we're getting there. There's bits and pieces at a time, including at the BCC. Your advocacy again made a difference, and it was overwhelming amount of engagement about the retail pet store ordinance. This particular meeting, we had two options that basically came back to the board. One was with grandfathering of existing pet stores that here in Orange County, and the other one was just a ban, sort of the safest of those. And there was a very engaged discussion by residents and by professionals, vets, and people who work in trainers, people who have had experiences, consumers. And at the end of the day, the board by consensus agreed to move forward with the outright ban of retail pet stores, which will include cats, dogs, rabbits. And we really learned so much about that process. I think the mayor made a really good point, Lee, when he said that this doesn't really solve the root issue, which is the puppy mill. But what I tried to explain as much as I could was, anytime there's a criminal enterprise, it requires, and especially one like this, where there is a huge market for what is basically inhumane breeding conditions and breeding practices, but it requires, the supply and the demand side. And yes, we don't have the supply side here. That takes place somewhere, usually in the Midwest, where there's lots of open space for them to hide their illegal puppy mill operation. But we were providing the demand side. How many thousands of puppies were sold last year? 8,000. And
8,000, yeah.
we have limited resources already in trying to take care of our county's sort of, abandoned pets or abused pets. And to think that there is this multi-million-dollar industry sort of riding on the backs of these innocent creatures and really taking such advantage of consumers. I couldn't believe the predatory lending practices that we found out that they were utilizing, interest rates of between 22 and 200%. People were, taking out these gigantic loans to get a puppy because they fall in love, and then you'll pay anything, right? When your family falls in love with this little creature, and then the creature's sick and makes your family sick, and then your vet bills pile up, but you still owe that money.
Yeah, and I have to say, I was interested in hearing some of the people who came out and said that. So sorry, everybody. I apologize about that. I was right in the middle of making our point about having some of the testimonials from some employees from some of these major retail stores kind of talk about their experience of, working with the animals and their fears of losing their jobs.
And that is so legitimate and so understandable. And I really did want to express my understanding of that concern. But it's got to be, there has to be a balance. And I think it's really important to note that even if there is a ban, there'll be a transition time of up to a year for those retailers to pivot their business models. And there's a lot of evidence that retail pet supply stores are a booming business. Grooming stores, training pets, the pet industry without selling pets is still very lucrative, and Orange County will be making absolutely no moves to interfere with any of that. It is really targeted to very specifically outlets that have been identified and as getting the import of male puppies. And we learned also that rabbits, there's a industry out there of really rabbit mills that they sell certain times of the year, and then they end up just being abandoned, and it's tragic. So it's a very narrow, laser focused ordinance.
Yeah, and just so that you know, there were some numbers quoted. I think it was about 60% of a markup for the actual accessories for animals, which is where the real profit is, and then a markup on the puppies and everything. But even if you were to redo that model, they're still in the green with the regards to their revenue generation.
Right, and I think the point was made that with it being understanding that the existing retail stores, pet stores, have been a source of statewide investigation. Our state attorney actually has an investigation open, and one of them for both consumer fraud issues as well as animal cruelty issues. So you're looking at something that Orange County is really aligning itself with a state of investigation, other counties, other municipalities, even other states. At the state legislature this year, one of the lawmakers did bring up a bill that would reflect the same things that we would have in our ordinance. So that may happen in the future, and then we just become, sort of a state plan with the exact same language or similar language.
So it's an interesting BCC. Definitely check that out. And if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Let's just jump into some of the COVID updates that you had.
Okay, yeah. So if you have not heard, this is really important for all my young friends out there, all my mom friends out there, all my teacher friends out there. We are now able to vaccinate ages 12 and up. It is the Pfizer vaccine. Orange County is no longer doing the appointment set up through the Orange County Convention Center. It is now at community centers. The one in District 1 is at the Magic Center on Crown Point. And my boy was vaccinated this week. He got his first vaccine, felt great. He's like, oh, my arm's a little sore, but otherwise he felt great. And it felt really good to get that last one of us vaccinated this week. It really felt like we were rounding the corner. 50%, I think, of all Orange County residents now have had at least their first vaccine. We're in the over 70% range for our 65 and up. So we are really, really, really looking good for summer. I think, you're going to be hearing more about once those numbers hit that the masks. I know the CDC had new guidelines for mask recommendations. I want to say something. If you feel more comfortable in your mask, there are going to be places and times that I will also. And in fact, I really want everyone to always stay 6 feet away from me. Just kidding. But I do think that it's not going to be a light switch. We've really been used to living a certain way and being cautious and safe. And that's okay. We keep doing that because we don't know who out there has been vaccinated. And this is Florida, for heaven's sake. So, we are never going to know. Our governor said that we're not allowed to ask. So, so please do what makes you comfortable and understand that if you get to a business and they tell you to wear a mask, that's up to them. Private businesses get to make those rules, right? So when you get to a business and they say, we don't take American Express, or they say you can't smoke inside the building, you don't yell at them. That's my right. So I don't know what happened during this pandemic where people felt like they could yell at private business owners about their rights, because really the private business owner has the right to say, we want to make sure our employees are safe. This is what we're asking customers to do.
We're already at that 50% mark as of this week, and we're trying to get to that 76% mark for herd immunity. So I'm feeling very excited about our trajectory of getting there.
I do too. And if you all tuned in for the BCC meeting, the COVID update in general was very optimistic as far as the number of hospitalizations are down, the number of vaccinations are up, our overall positivity rate is down. And we're going to be seeing some funding for the things that we've really been struggling with during the pandemic. We had an opportunity to get a briefing about the American Rescue Plan, which will be sending money in to help with a variety of shortcomings that we're enduring as a fallout from the pandemic. And one of those that we were able to approve this last BCC was some affordable housing in the county, based sort of in what is surplus property of Orange County's. Hopefully there's going to be additional programs and projects where we can invest in some properties. These happen to be surplus properties, so they were ready and available, but we're going to continue to pursue any of those opportunities.
Yeah, especially with the mayor's affordable housing for all kind of plan. It sounds like there's actual strides that are being pretty straightforward with regards to all this aid that's available. And I know they've even made mention about potentially converting some hotels in the future.
Right. They're going to try to find opportunities where they can, because if there's an opportunity to, a situation where you could help not just the population that's looking for good and affordable housing, but also potentially, a business that is struggling, and how are they going to convert that business over to something else, and what's going to happen to that property. We've seen condemned old hotels that ended up having to be raised, and you think, okay, well, if that had potentially been repurposed for housing, wouldn't that have been a win for everybody, and not just the people that end up having an opportunity for more affordable housing, but also for the property owners themselves?
One other thing that they did bring up during that American Rescue Plan conversation was also with regards to, and the COVID updates, was with regards to the emergency rental assistance program. I think they were saying that they were really thinking about changing that requirement of having the landlord involved, because there was they're discussing that.
Well, so the issue is that the funding that comes from the federal government comes with Treasury guidelines. And so there's very specific requirements that the Treasury sends down. The issue has been that the first wave of funding came with a set of instructions that's different from the second wave. So what they're wrestling with right now and trying to get clarification from the Treasury Department is how to streamline that, make it more simple and more accessible for renters and for landlords, because it doesn't do us any good to have the money allocated and not get into the landlord's accounts and before they need to get their own mortgages paid for, because that's where the issue lies.
I've heard some people say that they're having trouble getting their landlords on board, and that extra step of communication.
Yeah.
So
no, and it's a process. We definitely can help if you are struggling with that. We will walk you through it, get in touch with the people here in the county. Like I said, the funding itself is earmarked from a federal level, but the processing of it happens here, and the people that have been working on that are really trying to figure out ways to try to streamline and make that a more user-friendly process.
Also, you were celebrating during the BCC the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month.
Yes, it was a great celebration. To be able to I was really honored to be asked to be a presenter Friday evening, the 21st, the Asian Pacific American celebration in the month of May is really a celebration the whole month. And in the past, it's included some really big public gatherings. This one's going to look a little different, but I had the honor of being able to be a presenter for one of the awards. And you can watch that on Orange TV, if you follow the Orange TV from the county's website, or on Facebook Live or YouTube. And that'll be Friday the 21st, I think, from 7 o'clock, I believe. And there's amazing art that was a part of the contest. There will be some performing artists. There were some awards for outstanding members of our community and outstanding organizations. So it was a great celebration.
Yeah, and you also had the ability to invite a special guest to do the invocation as well.
Yes.
Tariq Rashid from the Islamic Center of Orlando.
Yeah, exactly. Imam Rashid, thank you. It was really such an honor. I feel very fortunate. District 1 has really an abundance of spiritual leaders who aren't just there to serve their congregation. They are there to serve their community, and these are people who have a real heart for their community. People joke about that on Apopka Island. They call it Religion Row, but it's so much more than just a series of religious institutions. It's really about the neighbors and how well they all work together for their community. And having the imam here from the Islamic Center, it was just really a great honor for us. So thank you.
Yeah, and to show that Orange County is so diverse, and there's so many opportunities for people and so many communities within communities that I love.
We have the best of all, and I think that is something to celebrate all, being able to really have in our community, the best the world has to offer in its, cultural diversity, and the fabric that we have here is just, I love it. I feel very, very grateful.
Well, traffic has always been a pain point to District 1 and all over Orange County, but there's a special highlight for those who emailed about Tatant Boulevard.
Yes, we don't know if we're saying that right. Tatant Boulevard, Village Lake. They are the intersection updates were approved. There will be I believe a four-way stop was what the decision was. If there's questions about that, we can get in touch with the people at traffic, but that was something that went on the agenda and was approved for funding and immediate work on. So hopefully that'll be coming down the pipeline really, really soon now.
So excited to inform the constituents that have been very worried about that this is actually happening.
Yes,
so
it's unbelievable to me how slow sometimes those projects move, understanding that there are safety concerns. And I hear you, if you have reached out, Lee hears you, we put it in, we pester again. It doesn't mean that we can make things happen like this, but we really do hear you, and we want to make sure that that we are voicing the concerns that we get as quickly as we can and as resoundingly as we can. Bureaucracy, though, is bureaucracy. So my frustrations I'm sure are shared by many people in our community. And we'll just keep making sure to get as much information in and pushing it up the line, trying to get the funding we need, in whatever regions need it. I think my frustration, I've always been very transparent about that there's, a couple areas in Orange County that seem to get all of the attention. And, we have 2,400 miles of roadway. And I say that the 8-mile stretch on I Drive gets all the focus. And just know that's not the case here in this office. We really try very, very hard to make sure that we're elevating any of those safety concerns, including notifying the Sheriff's Department and any other departments or agencies that we can get help from.
Yeah, and just one last point on that. We have had comments from our traffic engineering and public works team that there is like a 10 to 14 week delay on some of the inquiries because COVID, they had to completely convert to working at home, and a lot of the flow of work kind of got pushed. So just so you know, I really have empathy for what they're going through because the inquiries are coming in fast.
Yeah. Well, our traffic's back, and that's, which is, it shows that we are back on track as far as the, I think the economic drivers in the county, but it's just we're gonna have to be patient with some of those processes. And I think it's really important that we bring up, we did also get a briefing on the Metro Plan, update. I got to be an alternate that was in the Metro Plan meeting, a voting member this past time. And Metro Plan is a regional collaboration for transportation and transportation solutions. And it was very interesting because one of the things that they had tasked of the Metro Plan staff was to do a study and report on safety and pedestrian safety specifically. And here, after I begged the last few times that there's been road plans that have come up for them to make sure that we weren't exceeding speed limits in residential areas and taking into consideration the potential pedestrian transport, right? We want to make sure that if you live anywhere near a school or a shopping center or your work, that you can get there without getting in a car. That's a goal. That means we're doing good planning. If you can get around without getting in your car, it means we've done a good job planning. And I try to say it every chance I get, but I was gobsmacked. I sound like a grandma when I say that. At Metro Plan, to hear them in an official report say that there's an issue with the way that we are increasing speeds, increasing the size of the roads, and not considering the pedestrians in that equation. The presenter actually went as far as to say, when I traveled around the country, I noticed that the speed limits in residential areas were significantly lower than they are in Orange County. And I had a flashback, Lee, to a conversation we had with people in staff that told me, well, people don't obey the speed limit anyway if we decrease the speed limit. Because I went to them about trying to get speed limit decreased on our roadway. So, we'll just keep trying to get the data and the facts and the information to the people that can help us get those things done. And hopefully some of it will sink in. Stay engaged. Let me know where your concerns are, and we will continue to elevate them.
Yeah, my thought is 2 BCCs ago where you saw a roadway expansion design that was 9 lanes with this super long, super narrow pedestrian crosswalk, and you were like, go back to that slide. What if I were pregnant with a stroller with another baby trying to get from point A to point Z to get
in
to
a wheelchair,
or a wheelchair? And
he said, well, this is really about transit. And I said, pedestrians.
Is it?
Pedestrians are. That's why you put a crosswalk.
That's like the original
this was actually
transit.
in the tourist corridor. This is in the tourist corridor where we are embarrassingly the highest pedestrian accident death in the country. And so, I'll continue to harp away at that speed kills message. It's also a very inexpensive thing to look at because when we talk about trying to really retool some of these roads that were poorly designed in the first place, that have been just widened and widened, that's going to be an expensive fix. But if you talk about looking for ways to drop that speed limit, do a visual, make it visual, where medians have plantings and you get a visual that you have to slow down, that's not as expensive of a fix, and it's not a perfect fix, but it's a way to try to get people to slow down in residential areas.
Yeah. A couple more things that came up on the last BCC. You had a legislative update. So
Yes, I
people at the
did.
county pay attention to what's going on at the state and I guess give you guys briefings on what's going on.
So much of what we do here is affected by what happens at the state level. And there's been recently a trend, and this was the worst legislative session in my adult history. The trend is really has been to take power away from local control and make all the decisions go through Tallahassee. I think they're the worst examples I've ever seen of it on this particular this legislative session. To think that you as a local government now cannot decide where a gas station goes. That was an actual bill that was signed into law. For some reason, the majority controlled, Republican controlled Florida legislature doesn't trust you to make any decisions for yourself in local government. So you now, what happens in your backyard is, whether it's an emergency order, those will no longer be in local control. There were decisions up and down the line, right? Some very important decisions about sustainability options that will no longer be in local control, and the list goes on. I think sadly we're going to end up in a situation where something tragic is going to happen and the local government is going to say, well, we told you. We told you that we needed to make this decision here because we know what's going on with our residents and we understand if there's an emergency how to best address it. But as of right now, the people that you sent up there, and I would encourage you to look at what they voted for. And if you think you voted for somebody who either has a letter behind their name or wears a certain color shirt, because they told you at some point that they believe in small government, understand that they really went big in the overreach. And when I say overreach, what I mean is that they will be controlling everything to some extent in some of those what should have normally been local control issues. I will say that America was founded on the idea of local control, the idea of being taxed and told what to do from the royalty across the pond is how we became a country. So you should be really offended that the people in Tallahassee are trying to tell you what you can and can't do, and trying to tell you that that your local government can't be involved.
Yeah, I mean, some of the voting restrictions that you brought up, also nuanced claims and emergency orders.
Yeah. So let me say this about the voting restrictions. The supervisors of elections are elected positions. So across the state of Florida, it's bipartisan. There are Republican and Democratic voter of elections. They were in agreement and came out as a coalition in opposition to the voting restrictions that went into effect here in Florida.
Wow.
They felt like they were that they would discourage votes, that they would really push people off the rolls, and that some of the things that they were able to really see work during a pandemic, as far as making sure that people could have safe access to voting, are now going to be restricted. For instance, it used to be that if you let's say you're in the military and you want to send in your mail-in ballot, you could get a request for that mail-in ballot here in Florida, and it stayed good for a long period of time, and then you would get a notice saying, oh, you're going to have to re-request it. Now every single year you have to ask for it. So if you just expect that to come, and then let's say you're deployed overseas, let's say you're a college student and you're just expecting that to come because that's what you did the last time.
Yeah.
It's just not going to come, right? So that's one less vote. And it's really disgusting to me that they call it they call it voter protection, but at the same time, it's not. Let's call it what it is. It's voter suppression. If they really wanted to protect the voters and what democracy should be in Florida, what they needed to look at was putting fake candidates in elections. And that all over Florida was a strategy that was successfully used, not here in Orange County, as you all know. But it was used all over the state of Florida as a way to manipulate voters. That's what they should have addressed. That's fraudulent in a sense that you don't, when you go to the ballot and you think those are all legitimate candidates and they're not, and one was put there just to dilute the vote or to trick you because they have the same last name as somebody else on the ballot. And they didn't address it. It never came up in the legislative session. Instead, what they decided was that, if you are a nursing home resident, that your grandchild can't even mail your mail-in ballot for you anymore. So there we have it.
Well, do you think that places like the Amway Center and private businesses can step up again like they did during COVID and partner with the supervisor of elections to do more bigger opportunities for people to vote?
You know, it was fantastic the way that they were able to do early voting sites in some more, very public realms where they got the, the visibility up, and it became a much, a community event.
Yeah.
I hope so. I haven't read the fine or print in that. I haven't looked at the nitty gritty of the bill, but the supervisors of elections, like I said, they really do communicate and coalesce across the state. So hopefully if that bill is challenged, it will have some muscle behind it. I believe the League of Women Voters has already filed a constitutional challenge to it. I believe the ACLU has filed a constitutional challenge to it. So we'll see.
We'll see. And then last but not least, there was a comp plan transmittal regarding the open space requirements. And I asked you, I was like, can you explain that to me? 'Cause that
so
sounds
frustrating.
It sounds like it's just an open space that's going to be transmitted into something else. It sounds very simple.
Yeah, because
but
the words that they use for some of these things they're not intuitive. It's transmittal is what they're using in this sense to change the language. So your comprehensive plan is established and they're changing the language in the comprehensive plan. If the staff here decide that something isn't working in the comprehensive plan, they have the option to bring a text amendment. And this particular text amendment was deleting open space requirement in rural settlement and decreasing open space requirements in areas of Orange County that are considered growth centers, but are also in the Wekiva study area. And I was very concerned with this because so often we don't have options for how we can negotiate open space with developers if they've been promised that a piece of land has been valued for development. And we're told, oh, you can't change that because it's a violation of the property rights, and you would be on the hook for what the price difference would be. So this, you think about going back and changing the text amendment to say that we don't need as much open space requirement, to me seemed very counterintuitive to everything that I've heard from the residents. I brought that up and I said, everything I hear at my office is that we need more parks, we need more open space, we need more wild spaces. Why would we be making a staff-initiated text amendment to delete that or minimize that? And I was the only vote in trying to oppose that. It passed, and so that'll be changing. And it'll happen again where I'll try to go and argue that we should be putting away some open space, and I'll be told, well, our comprehensive plan says that open space requirement isn't the percentage doesn't require that, and I watched it happen, and I'm only one vote. I was really frustrated.
Does the public get a chance to have input on that? I feel like it came right underneath our noses.
Well, it was published, and I tried to make sure I was communicating. I think we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the way that it's written in the agenda, it wasn't easy to understand. And I think that I need to figure out how to do a better job, Lee, of expressing some of those things that I know of concerned to our citizens early enough that we can really make sure that they speak up for that. They tucked it into the agenda as the last item, right behind some green space acquisition. I celebrated green space acquisition. We got to put some more land away in preservation, but right underneath that was a text amendment to minimize the open space. So,
it's like, hey, we bought this little tiny bit of land. Look at how amazing we are and how sustainable we are. But we're going to do away with this really essential protection that is supposed to be ongoing forever.
And I know there was conservation groups that reached out to other leaders and myself leading up to this about their concerns with it. So, it it shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody else in the commission, but I can't discuss it with them before the vote. I was surprised. I was disappointed.
I'm disappointed. I feel like it happened right underneath our noses, and I honestly didn't really understand it.
And and it leads me to something else that I kind of wanted to talk about, which I feel like I really do have to really keep a close eye on each item on the agenda, because sometimes it isn't as transparent to somebody who just maybe tunes into, or looks onto the OCFL website and wants to check the agenda. We had a BCC this Tuesday, and we're turning right around and having one again next Tuesday. So it's a really quick turnaround on this one. It was moved only a couple months ago. It's been not even. It's a little bit of a tough one for me. You all who know me know I have a graduating senior. I have a young man who's turning 16 on the day of this meeting, and so I didn't get why we had to move it from the 25th, especially knowing that it was on the public calendar for months and months and months. So I reached out and said, can we just, maybe if there's something controversial or something that's going to go long, make sure that it doesn't happen that day, knowing that I had, family obligations and that this was a last minute change and the public really should have time to digest some of these issues. But lo and behold, it's going to be a very packed agenda. So, I expressed my frustration. I want you to know that I think that you deserve as much transparency as possible. That's why we do this every Friday. Next Tuesday will be another BCC. I will not be doing my family events that day so that I can make sure not to miss anything, because you all hired me. I know this isn't a seat that I'm going to be in forever, so I will make sure to do my best to represent you that day.
Yeah. Let's talk about the next BCC. I would really love to encourage all of you, if any of this stuff burns you up inside, email district1@ocfl.net. I'd love for you to come out and speak during the time of public comment. I feel like more voices that are concerned about these items should really be heard.
Yeah. And if there's ever one of those items that doesn't make sense, give us a call, give us an email. We'll dig into it, because some of them, they're not worded, they're not user friendly. If you don't work in the development world, or you're not an ordinance reader and writer, sometimes they're not what they appear at first. So it sometimes it'll take a little digging, and we can do that. We can explain it and go over it and make sure that you get your voice heard.
Yep. Now for the next BCC, we do have some fun things coming down the line. Fun as in, we've received a lot of emails about backyard chickens.
Yes, we're going to have our first public hearing at 5:01 p.m. on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And this will be one of two. The ordinance that was talked about at the last BCC about the backyard chickens in Orange County, it's not going to be anything new or different. We will make sure to share some of the language so that you all can see how it looks. And it looks like, it's moving forward, which is great news for people who are interested in having their own chickens. And I know that they're trying to really make sure that there's something consistent that we can go back to be able to have as a policy.
I'm just very excited because I come from like the urban farming background, from fleet farming, and I have to say, the fact that they're using language about food security in this conversation and making sure that people can be able to be food sovereign and providing for their own families through having backyard chickens, I'm just like, my heart is singing about it.
Yeah. Well, and then the weeks and months to come, we're probably going to re-engage on this, because I think part of that also goes to education and making sure people know how to do that the right way, and how to make sure that they are being humane, and that they're being good stewards of their chickens and if they are farming. And so we will continue to have those conversations, or if you have any questions about it, reach out. I am not an expert, but I know that we've got some great people in our world that know a little more about it. And yeah, the goal is to have residents that know how to feed themselves in the worst of times and the best of times. And
Yep. And shout out to Lori Forsman and Jeff Benavides for putting that language together and putting all this data together. And if you have any questions, definitely email us or drop them in the chat. Also, we got a briefing today about something that I know you're so passionate about, which is mental health and behavioral health. And I guess they are Children and Family Services and our homeless committees are coming together with United Way, and they're doing an analysis right now.
Yeah, so this is going to be sort of the culmination of an interest in what was happening during this pandemic to people's mental health. We've talked about it here that this is time, the fallout, the emotional and mental fallout from this time is going to really be heavy, and making sure that if we have opportunities to wrap services around people and to help communities, that we're going to do it. The United Way is actually, as a non-interested party, if you will, is doing the assessment to see where those gaps are. We find all the time that there are services that are in silos, and how to make sure that services don't duplicate, that that it's not wasteful, that it's getting to the right people. So hopefully all those pieces will come from the United Way assessment. And then part of the funding will come from actually the federal plan. And we want to make sure that we're using that as soon as possible to help people, because I think it's going to look more normal in our society over the next few months. But it doesn't mean that we're as healthy as we need to be emotionally and mentally. And so, especially children, we know that the long-term effects of what has been a very anxiety-provoking time of poverty, and the increasing levels of poverty in the area as an effect of the COVID pandemic.
Yep.
So yeah, there's going to be more information to come, but that's on the Tuesday agenda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very excited to hear more about what these committees will be focusing on. And I know right now I had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Hall from our drug division, who actually was talking about the opioid crisis, which he said is actually a fentanyl crisis.
Yes, because there's like they're using a mix of fentanyl in it's crazy to think that so many people started with a prescription for a legitimate injury or a surgery or something, and then ended up eventually overdosing on a heroin fentanyl mixture. And it's just devastating. And I don't think there's anybody I know that hasn't lost a very close loved one. I lost my cousin. I think everybody has that story. And it's one of those things where I think that we understand better now that we're not treating it well. We're not treating it the right way. We may have stopped the prescription pipeline, but now it's become a street use. And so we don't know what people are putting in them. And sometimes that, the street use is the deadliest use.
Yeah. One major quote that he said was that the mental health crisis should be equal in terms of our terminology as the drug crisis in any regard, because they're completely connected.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm excited to take a deeper dive into that as well at the next BCC. We have an Econ River Protection Ordinance discussion coming up. I was just curious.
Yeah, same. So on Tuesday, one of the discussion items is actually being presented by another commissioner. So we passed, obviously, the right to clean water here in Orange County. Very proud of the work that the people who championed that did. But it only does us the most good if we've seen it reflected in our ordinances and making sure that we've gotten everything utilizing that language. We know that the voters mandated that we use the language. So what I think this is going to be about is making sure that our ordinances are reflective of the right to clean water charter amendment that passed overwhelmingly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so some quick updates. We only have two more. So number one, I went to the Board of Trustee meeting with the library yesterday. They didn't talk about anything with Horizon West, but they did say that the June 10th meeting at 6 p.m. you can submit a comment from Horizon West, so definitely do that. And thank you, Horizon West Happenings.
Thank you all so much for staying plugged in. Horizon West Happenings, Leah, Cynthia, thank you all so much for staying plugged in and keeping everybody up to date. This is just it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so I pester everybody in a hallway, in an elevator, in emails, and just making sure. So what's the update? What's the update? What's the update? And they have basically been like, all right, just hold on. We're not talking about that yet. So anything that we find out, we will share. Otherwise, please consider tuning in. What is it going to be on Zoom, or are they disbanding the Zoom?
Yeah, I'm going to email just to ask again, because they did have a conversation that they don't want to do it via Zoom anymore, but it was so accessible. So I think we can ask. If
that's the case, and we can talk about, what are some other options for people who live, further away, because I don't want you to have to drive down here for that. If you want to, please do. I love the idea of an in-person comment, but at the same time, I don't think that's a reasonable request, knowing how big our county is. So we can figure out another way to make sure that you're being heard.
And then last but not least, Orange County Library, they were trying to pivot because of COVID and find outdoor
This is the coolest.
opportunities. And so they're actually doing an opportunity called Story Walk.
This is the coolest. What's better, like combining my two favorite things, right? Being on the West Orange Trail and books.
Yes.
So the West Orange Trail, well, this is Parks and Rec partnering with the Orange County Library System to do Story Walk, which will be, I think the dates.
May 26th, starting at 10 a.m. will be the first date, and then June 23rd and June 28th will be the 3 dates.
Yes.
And they're featuring.
Okay, so this is so cool. The story, A Good Night Walk by Alicia Cooper, is the featured story, and it's going to be along the Crown Point Cross area near Chapin Station on the West Orange Trail in Winter Garden. So we will get another reminder out on social media about that. Please share it, because that's one of those things that I love. I love the idea. I think it's such a cool. And right now, like the weather today, oh my gosh, it'll be
So gorgeous.
perfect.
Yeah, and it's an inexpensive thing to do with your family, and they're going to
Exactly.
have it in Spanish. I think they are talking about doing it in other languages in the future.
I
So,
love it. I love it.
yeah. Do we have any questions so far? We do? Okay, we'll take a couple.
All right, we have a couple questions. One of them comes from JT Haven asks, will you be discussing the walkability along Avalon Road?
Yes. Yes. I think, well, I think for starters, right now, Avalon Road has some areas that we will, because they're in the rural settlement, not be probably altering. The areas that are outside of the the rural settlement, if there are connections with neighborhoods, if there are schools, we are making sure that the requirements that actually are in place in the comprehensive plan aren't waived for connectivity to those and connectivity to the schools. I know that because there are areas that are just now under construction in Avalon, people just need to be really, really careful driving in that area. There's going to be construction vehicles. In the fall, there's going to be school buses. So that combination makes me very nervous. Understanding that in Orange County, well, actually, I think it's across the state, that you don't get a school bus to your house if you live within 2 miles of a school. One of the things that I think is really important is any chance that we have to take what is a standard sidewalk size up to the 12-foot width. I'm going to push to do that. There are opportunities, and I know there are places in Horizon West that they've added. They have a standard sidewalk on one side and the larger on the other, or other places in Orange County, I should say. So yes, stay careful on that stretch. Make sure that, and especially if you're biking, that you keep an eye out for some of those construction vehicles. Like I said, that makes me the most nervous. But know that any plan that comes in front of me for a roadway agreement, because a lot of those are agreements with private developers.
Yeah.
One of the things that I go straight to is the connectivity to pedestrian walkways and connectivity to the schools and any commercial.
I heard about one today along how they're going to be requiring much wider sidewalks in that area. So it's coming.
We got it. Yeah, we just have to keep fighting for it. And there's a trails update also. If you go to, actually, I think it posted on Orange County, and we'll share it again. The trails plan is coming together, but it is a plan, which means that there are different stakeholders as far as landowners and municipalities. So those things are starting to come together, and you'll see some more of those connections happening.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, we have one more question from Nick Littell. Can we make it so our tourists can get around without a car? We need to link our attractions with our entertainment centers and hospitality zones. Most of them are in a row along I-4. It would be a fantastic opportunity for high-capacity mass transit. Let's reduce the tourist traffic.
You are absolutely saying verbatim.
You better run for office.
Verbatim what I have said in as many meetings as I can get into about this issue. If you had followed some of the plans before we went into COVID mode, there were plans actually for an infrastructure sales tax that potentially could have funded really some big changes. I'm not sure if that's going to come back or if we're going to need to look for other ways to make sure that we're offering that. I think that we absolutely will never be the destination we want to be if we can't offer that type of transit where you can, hop either, on your bike, or you can hop on something at the mass transit that isn't your, individual car, and get somewhere within that visitor corridor. I think that hearing that Brightline is doing the high speed is only one part of it. They're high speed, which means this is the, city to city, city to city. People that fly into Orlando will be able to get to Tampa, and they'll be able to get to Miami, and they'll be able to get to Disney if that, continues the way that the plan is, which is fantastic for us because that does feel like a world-class destination option. What we know from the interest in that is that we have so many opportunities for intermodal transportation, which I really would love to see as, an east-west connector and some way to make sure that if people are coming into the airport, they can go straight out to the iDrive Convention Center corridor without having to get on the road at all.
Yeah. I have to say, I studied in Italy for a year in a super rural place that was all separated with mountains. And when you have mountains, it adds another 30 minutes to an hour in your commute because you have to go down the mountain before you get to a main road. We were still able to catch a train pretty much a bus every 15 minutes to get to the base of the mountain. Yeah. Jump on a bus to get to the nearest train pretty much every 15 minutes. I didn't even need to look at a schedule because I just knew if I waited long enough, it was going to come.
And if you go to Switzerland, they make fun of the Italian system because they're a little more relaxed with their schedules.
Yeah.
Because most of those, it blew my mind how many options there were for mass transit.
Yeah.
There were every little town, train stations that were, you could get a schedule that showed you, every branch that went. And we have a lot of the skeleton for that because as, people who know a little bit about Florida history know that when Flagler got here, one of the reasons why Florida ended up being developed was that it was, there was the train line that went up the sort of I-95 corridor and then across where I-4 is now. So there are some really great opportunities. I do think we're going to have to keep an eye on some of the preemptions. So, one of the preemptions was really a shot across the bow to the local leaders in Tampa who were looking forward to really some more sustainable options for transportation. And they really wanted to discourage fossil fuel industry from continuing to grow. And so they were looking at restricting where a gas station can be put in. Well, when you put a gas station in, you affect not just that corner. It goes into the ground. The potential for petroleum discharge goes up. So really, that is a local issue, right? Because if that leaks, then it's your, it's your water systems and it's your...
You have to clean it up.
It's your neighborhoods.
Not
and
the state,
The state preempted that. And it was directly a shot at the Tampa attempt to try to make sure that they were really thinking ahead and encouraging sustainable transit options and opportunities. So we'll see. That struggle continues. I think that the leadership here finally sees the threat of the preemption and home rule takeover. And I think in transportation, having the collaboration of the region is important. You go to Metro Plan meetings and to hear that there's a lot of interest, not just here, but, Osceola County and Lake County and Seminole County to have this interconnectivity and the people over in the Canaveral area want that connectivity because you're talking about, the regional visits and regional movement. People who live in Horizon West maybe work on the Space Coast or maybe work somewhere in Polk County. So we want to make sure that, when we have those conversations, it's a regional conversation.
Well, happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Thank you so much for sharing all these updates. Your brain is just, it's so inspiring.
Oh my gosh, she's so kind because it really is just a little bit of a mess in there right now. It feels like a messy basement right now.
Do you have anything that you want to say to everybody?
I do. Okay, so I'm going to try not to get emotional about this. I just mentioned my daughter's graduating next week from high school, and I just want to thank her teachers if they hear this, and all of our teachers, because it does take a village, and there are so many parts of her that I've seen just grow and shine that are because of you. If you taught her or you just taught, teachers make such a difference, and we don't value them enough, and we don't give them the credit they deserve. They should be, paid the most and cherished the longest, and we give them a couple days and of teacher appreciation, and then tell them that their budget's being cut. And I just want you to know how grateful I am, and I will always support our teachers, and I thank you. And I want to say congratulations to all the graduates out there.
Yay!
It's a big time, and I'm so proud of you all. You finished high school in the most trying of circumstances, so you will go on and do wonderful things, and I'm very, very proud. And that goes for college graduates too. Oh, and I believe the law school graduated today here. I think FAMU had theirs, so congratulations to all of you. Go out and do great things.
Congratulations to you and your daughter. That's a huge deal.
Not crying. Not crying.
Hug a teacher this weekend. I don't have as close of a relationship with my parents as I'd like, but I had a couple teachers that literally saved my life, that went out of their way to buy a yearbook for me because I couldn't afford one, and make sure I had tickets to prom because I wasn't going to go because I couldn't afford it. Teachers are guardian angels, so please hug a teacher this weekend. We love you. Thank you.
Again.
She's going to make me cry.
Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Have a good weekend.